Hi there and welcome to some of my favourite stress busting yoga techniques. Stress unfortunately is an inevitable part of life, but if we can find a way to embrace it and overcome it and build our resilience, then it gives us the confidence to know that we can get through stress. And yoga is one of the best ways in which we can do that. Yoga is well known for helping reduce the production of cortisol, the stress hormone. So I'm going to share with you today some of my favourite techniques to help reduce stress. And we're going to start off in Tadasana, in mountain pose, connecting through our feet and grounding into the earth beneath our feet. Grounding is a really great way to offset stress. So when we're feeling stressed, just placing our feet on the floor, closing down our eyes and connecting to the energy of the earth beneath our feet can be a really nice grounding tool. And then just imagine the energy from the earth traveling back through the legs, up, lifting the kneecaps, engaging the quads, tucking the tailbone, and then out through the crown of your head. Now, we often manifest stress in physical tension in our body, and one of the most typical areas is what I call the triangle of stress, which is this area here. So the furrowed brow, clenched jaw and tight shoulders. I just want to share some of my favourite techniques for shifting that, because if we can shift the physical manifestation of stress, it can help to shift the mental anguish. So with the furrowed brow, I like to take the three fingers and gently rotate them between my eyebrows in one direction about 6 times. And this is a great one to do when you're putting your cream on at the beginning and end of the day. Don't pull the face, just really gentle movements, about 6 times in one direction and 6 times in the other direction. Helps to relieve that tension of the furrowed brow, one of the typical areas where we manifest stress. Another area is the clenching jaw, and we can just notice that we're doing that and release our jaw. But another thing I like to do is to cross my fingers and using the V of the cross, gently, without dragging the face, smoothing that V along the jawbone, helps to relieve the tension there. Again, a really nice one to do when you've put some cream on in the morning and there's a bit more mobility in the face because of the cream. And then the final area is shoulders. Quite often we have really tight shoulders, and one of the great ways of doing this is to do what's called a releasing breath. So we breathe in and bring the shoulders right up to the ears, really exaggerating that tightness. And as we breathe out, we exaggerate the shrug away, releasing the tightness in the shoulders and doing a big exhalation, a big sigh out, releasing everything that no longer serves us. Like that. So we're going to do it again. Breathing in, shrugging the shoulders right up by the ears. And as you breathe out, exaggerate the shrug of the shoulders away and a big sigh out. Releasing everything that you're ready to let go of. 2 more times, breathing in. And release it. And last time, breathing in. And release it. And taking the arms overhead as you breathe in. As you breathe out, coming into a forward fold. Taking a tiny bend in the legs. You can rest the fingertips on the floor if you're quite flexible, or take hold of the elbows. Tiny bend in the legs protects the hamstrings from overstretching and allows you to get your chest nice and close to the thighs. And as we're in this pose, you can imagine, if you like, all of your stresses and strains pouring out of the crown of your head. They can even go back into the earth to be recycled by the universe, if that's what you believe in. And you can imagine them as images or words, depending on how you perceive things. You may imagine them as energy or light. I've got a client who imagines conkers, and the conkers come out of her head with her stresses and strains on and just bounce away. And I love that. I think that's a lovely bit of fun to have with this. So however you want to imagine your stresses and strains pouring out of the crown of your head, and just allowing them to be recycled, letting them go. And then gently rolling up one vertebra at a time. Bringing the feet slightly wider than hip distance. Taking the arms overhead as you breathe in and coming onto your tiptoes to balance. Balancing is a great way to distract your brain from what you're worrying about. And distraction often can be one of the best ways to relieve stress. It's very hard to balance if you're distracted by what you're worrying about. Lowering the feet to the floor, bring the hands to heart center, and we're going to come down into yoga squat. Now, this pose is a great pose for, again, grounding yourself. It also opens up the outer hips and the lower back. We're trying to lift up through the crown of the head. If you want to make your body work harder, you can slightly lift your butt and engage the butt and the thighs, but you can just allow the legs to come, the bottom to come as close to the floor as is comfortable for you. And of course, you may not be able to get your heels on the floor. That's fine. If you're up on the heels, that's fine. We're gently going to come out of this pose and come onto our knees. I'm going to go into child's pose. So you can have your knees together or your knees apart, depending on how you prefer to do child's pose. Extending the arms out, we're going to do the active version. Forehead on the floor. You can always place a block or a book under your forehead. If you can't get your bottom onto your heels, you can always place a block or a book between your feet. And we're going to do a practice that I call I surrender. So often when we're stressed, we can't necessarily change it or avoid it. Sometimes we just have to choose to accept it. And this was a technique a good friend of mine taught me a few years ago when we were living in Bangkok, and myself and the kids moved back to the UK. So we had a big international move going on, and I was also in the midst of a divorce. So I had two of life's biggest stressors going on. And this was a technique she taught me to help deal with it. Basically, you come into child's pose and you repeat the phrase, or the mantra even, I surrender to all that is, as it is now, and so it is. I surrender to all that is, as it is now, and so it is. I surrender to all that is, as it is now, and so it is. And you keep saying that mantra until you feel a shift. And the shift is very subtle, quite profound. You might feel like you want to yawn, sigh, or smile. You may feel a lightness in your body or a grounding heaviness. But you'll notice a little shift, and you keep repeating the mantra, I surrender to all that is, as it is now, and so it is. And of course, the energy of surrender is not about giving up or giving in, but it's all about giving over. I surrender to all that is, as it is now, and so it is. And you would repeat that until you feel the shift. Walking the hands back up and rotating back onto our knees. We're going to just shift our legs around and bring the legs out in front, taking the arms overhead as we breathe in. As we breathe out, coming down anywhere along the legs as is comfortable. Now that may be the shins, the ankle, the feet. You can either also wrap a strap around the ball of your feet if you prefer. Keeping the legs nice and active, stretching through the hamstrings, extending out through the crown of the head, increasing the energy to the nerves along the spine and massaging the intestines. The seated forward fold is very restorative. Any forward fold, whether you're standing or seated, helps to cool and calm the mind. Of course, a really valuable tool to know when you're feeling stressed, because often the mind is going a million miles an hour. Just coming back to the breath, nice, smooth breaths. The breath is really important in helping to manage stress, because often when we're stressed, our breathing is shallow. When we can slow our breathing down, taking nice, smooth breaths like we're encouraged to do throughout yoga, it helps to just balance and calm the mind. And gently releasing the hands, taking the arms overhead, bringing the hands back down either side of the hips. So we're going to come up to the wall now, and we're going to do a pose that's called Viparati Karini, legs up the wall. So basically, it's not terribly dignified getting into it, but it's really worth it once you get there. You're trying to get your bottom as close to the wall as you can, bringing your legs up the wall or the door or the wardrobe, or in my case, the radiator, and bringing the hands either side of the hips. And then you just rest here. Now, this is a great pose to do at the end of the day before you go to bed. It's really deeply restorative. Just bringing your attention back to that triangle of stress that we talked about at the beginning of the practice. And just softening the forehead. Releasing the space between the eyes and around the eyes. Relaxing the mouth, tongue and jaw. And releasing and softening the shoulders. And this is a great pose to do. You can do it for as long as you like. If you have low blood pressure, you may notice that your toes start to get a little bit numb, and that's a sign to transition out of it. But if not, you can stay here as long as you like. Lovely, deeply restorative pose, helps to offset stress. And then the last pose I want to share with you today is hugging your knees to your chest. So when we hug ourselves, we release the feel-good hormone, oxytocin, and this helps to offset the production of cortisol, the stress hormone. Now, what happens with cortisol is when our amygdala is triggered, when we're stressed, we release cortisol into the body, but unfortunately cortisol makes the amygdala even more sensitive. So we get stuck in a vicious circle. So we're stressed, we release cortisol into the body, and it makes the amygdala more sensitive, so we're more likely to get triggered and stressed, releasing more cortisol, and a vicious circle begins. And we can do some relaxation techniques, breathing, meditation, yoga, calming the mind. This helps to reduce and descend and to reduce the size of the amygdala, helps to shrink the amygdala, and it helps reduce the production of cortisol. And when we hug our knees into our chest and we are releasing oxytocin, the feel-good hormones, and we don't have to hug our knees into our chest, we can just rub our arms, or of course getting a hug from someone else, but those are a little bit few and far between these days. But just releasing oxytocin, the feel-good hormone, again also helps to flood our brain with happy hormones, releasing the impact of the production of cortisol. And gently rolling over onto your right hand side, coming up onto all fours. And that completes a really short sequence of stress busting techniques. If you'd like to know more, feel free to email me at alex@myananda.co.uk or visit my website www.myananda.co.uk. Thanks so much for joining me. Namaste.